This is the Titan Army C32C1S. This is a 31.5-inch screen. It's running at 1440p, has a 1500R curvature, and it may have a VA panel, but it's 240 Hz. And the thing that makes this special to me is the price. Right now in here, I can get it for just below 300 euros. And if we look at the alternatives, pretty much everything is either 50 or more bucks more expensive, has a slower refresh rate, or is smaller, or all of the above. So as far as my research goes, I can't really find any alternative that beats this thing in price to performance. Then you might also ask, who in God's name plays games on a 32-inch screen? Me. I'm doing almost everything on a 30 or bigger inch screen. I know this isn't, let's say, the common opinion, but I'm a sucker for big screens. I always was. And I am sure I'm not the only one out there. So for those of us who enjoy big-ass pixel generators combined with nauseatingly fast movements, let's see what we get here. As you might have already guessed based on this thing's price, we are in the budget territory, and thankfully so. But this also means we get the budget level treatment from the start. But that's all right. We get all the things we need. A stand, as well as the usual stuff like a manual that nobody's going to read anyway and swear at the screen because using the menu is too complicated. A 1.5 meter long display port and power cable. And something that made me quite happy are the included mounting screws or standoffs for wall mounting options. Almost all of my monitors have always been wall or at least table mounted at some point or sooner or later, and I never know if the screws that I am using right now or that come with the arm are not in fact too long and might end up damaging the screen. Hence here we got replacements where the manufacturer guarantees that the standoffs or the screw part of the standoff is not too long so that the screw might come out on the other side of the screen. But for this today we used the stand. Doing so isn't particularly complicated. We first need to screw in the two pieces of the foot itself together, and then we take this back piece out of the monitor by pressing on the latch and screw that onto the foot. And after clicking it back in, voila, a standing screen. Now, this is a VA panel, so a vertical alignment type of panel. And if you look at the general opinion out there, pretty much everybody places it in between a TN and a IPS screen, basically the middle ground without the IPS uprise. Great contrast, viewing angle, and sometimes even color, depending on who you ask, but slow refresh rate and response times, which doesn't mean that it can't be improved upon. Hence the 1mm response time and 240 Hz refresh rate, and thus the reason why you would call this a gaming monitor, but also take this like with a grain of salt, because I know that manufacturers like to twinkle a bit on that 1 millisecond response time. Like, it depends on from which to which color, and nobody likes to say what they used, so yeah. Then we also got the screen curvature. It's 1500R, so not the most severe bend you could do. Though on a 31.5-inch screen, if you do like 1000, you would end up with like a freaking circle. Anyway, we also got the usual tilt, 5 degrees down and 15 degrees up, but I'm not particularly happy how that works here. Given the size of the screen, you're basically forced to tilt it by holding it at the top and bottom, which will inevitably result in fingerprints on the screen. And I can even see the fingerprints where I tilted it before, like, God. I would love to do it from the side, but yeah, I'm just lifting the screen. On the flip side, the stand is quite cool. I like the simplicity, for once, and that it doesn't scream gamer right into my face, and I can use that hole in the center there and in between the, let's say, left and right foot to hide the cables. And that's nice. Not too much in your face, unlike the logo right next to it, which is like green. And one thing I like to do on my monitors is see how wobbly it is after impact. Like if I run into the table or if I just hit the table, and how long it wobbles. And the longer it wobbles, the more annoyed I get. And funnily enough, this thing wobbles less or less long than my Asus ProArt displays in the other room, which is interesting. Behind the screen and hidden underneath this removable cap, we got the connections to HDMI 2.1s, to DisplayPort 1.4s and a audio out. And I mean out. This thing doesn't have any speakers. It's just taking whatever signal you're giving it through, let's say, HDMI, and then giving it out to your headphones, to your to your deck, to your whatever, but there are no speakers in here. But let's finally go to why anybody would even consider this, the 31.5-inch screen. And I'm happy to report, jumping back and forth between my editing rig, which runs on 4K screens at 32-inch, and this 31.5-inch running only 1440p wasn't as negative as I thought. Indeed, if I touch the glass with my nose, I can see physical pixels, which isn't true on my main screens, but going back only a little bit blurs things enough so that it becomes a pretty picture. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not like that one time that I fired up my old 27-inch monitors that were still on 1080p. There, the pixels just looked huge to me after like witnessing 4K once in my life. So that effect didn't happen here. And for monitors that are 30, 31, 32-inch wide, 16:9, 1440p will still do. I wouldn't edit on this thing, that also has other reasons, and I do need the sharpness of 4K and the color space. But for gaming, this will do, and it's not like you see physical pixels. So 1440p is still enough for that size. On the other hand, something that blew my mind completely was the 240 Hz rate. As somebody who is mainly just working on 60 Hz displays, doing the jump amazes me every goddamn time I'm doing it. Oh, fuck. Yo. I'm dizzy. Now, I'm not completely new to this. We have a 165 Hz display in house that I'm basically gaming on, but 240 is still a different world. But this is still a VA panel, so if you have an image that has the contrast going from max to min all over the place, like a white text on a black background, yeah, you still got that dark VA smearing going on, even more so if you use the red on black file that is kindly provided by this nice person. And a tiny bit of ghosting is also present. If we do the UFO test, it's hard for my camera to catch, sorry for that, but yes, there is a minuscule amount of ghosting present. But the truth is, during gaming, it didn't bother me at all. Truth be told, I am no competitive gamer, and frankly nowadays I don't even play like 10% of what I used to do 10 years ago. And making matters worse, if I do play games, it's usually not the kind of game that requires a 240 Hz display in the first place, or in other words, there is no system that could keep that thing at 240 FPS, but I can still see a massive difference. Like usually I play City Skylines on the 60 Hz IPS display, and it is just not comparable. I would happily trade in whatever minimal motion rendering that my IPS screens are protecting my eyes from in favor of that 240 Hz panel. Like, even if it is just displaying 100 of those 240 Hz, definitely better. On the flip side, running games where 240 Hz does make sense, for me, there is no smearing. I'm sure if we point a high-speed camera to that, we will see why the $800 OLED 240 Hz alternative is better. However, so far, as to what I have experienced with the combination of 1440p VA and 240 Hz, that whole debate about VA monitors or high refresh rate VA monitors smearing all over the place is vastly exaggerated. But that's also just me and my personal opinion and preference, and maybe I'm just not that sensitive to motion blur, and maybe you are, so VA panels are not the thing for you. But what I am extremely sensitive to are high-pitched sounds coming out of monitors. There is no power brick for this one. The power cable just goes straight into the monitor. Absolute silence. But before you declare me insane, this is why I am so sensitive to that. When I got these, I still had my PC in my bedroom, so I had to rip these things out, like the power cord out, every night. I couldn't sleep. That shit just drives me crazy. Anyway, so far we covered only the nice sides of this budget monitor. 240 Hz, it looks beautiful, and the ghosting isn't as bad as VA could have been, and the 1440p isn't a problem with the screen size and all. But we are still in the budget category, and with that usually also comes like budget stuff. Like the menu, yeah, it looks very gaming to me, and so does the green logo and button layout, which why not just make it in gray so that also people are not like appalled by it that do not like green. But that's like level 1. Let's go to level 2 budget stuff. If you move the monitor, you will probably grab it by the stand, which makes sense. And you will grab it as high as possible to have most of the weight closer to your hand, which is also fine. I usually do it like that. But what's not so fine is that the release latch to get the stand off is conveniently placed right where your hand will be. So yeah, I almost dropped this thing in front of the camera. That would have been great for the video, devastating for the screen, but great for the video. So for you, grab it lower. Saves a lot of money. That black piece that is supposed to hide the cables is also kinda useless. It hides the cables, yes, but it comes off so easily. Like when I try to tilt the monitor, it just falls out. Every goddamn time. Right now I don't even have it on there. It will just fall out as soon as I just hit it slightly, so. Tilting in general is just a pain. I can do it without cleaning the screen afterwards, and that's just annoying. Other than that, we got smaller things that I wouldn't consider a problem, but more like slightly useless. Like the army of game modes, some of which just crank up the contrast, and the option to display the refresh rate, which just stays at 240. Yeah, even if I force my game to be rendered at 8 FPS, the screen will just show it as 8 FPS on 240 Hz, which is 240 Hz, so can this thing even change? But the crosshair in the middle option is kinda cool, if you need that. Then we got backlight. Yeah, this thing has backlight, but it's just like a red circle that isn't nearly strong enough to reflect off onto anything, so it's, yeah. But at least it's red, so it signals people to just stop. Like if anybody comes into your room, you will just and exit the room, so there's that. And of course, HDR 400 and dual device picture next to picture mode. Like split the screen into two and then a Mac on one side or Windows on the other or whatever. Common options that I never use, really never, any of them, so I won't even try to comment on them. But then there is also another thing that might be also personal, because I just rarely use curved monitors like as a whole because of like my choices. But on this one, if there are multiple layers on top of each other on the edge of the screen, like a chat or a back button, I get a weird effect if I move my head to the other direction, like as if the button is left and I move closer to the right edge of the screen. That overlay button then starts giving me that 3D cinema effect, and I don't know, it's very weird, and I'm not even sure if the camera can catch it, but it's very weird. And I also might have to say it happens very, very rarely. Like I need to want to do it and move my head up until here to have that effect, but it's just weird. But even with these few minus points, and including the debate about VA panels having all kinds of issues or not, that price is just unbeatable. As I said in the beginning, the closest thing I found that comes even close to this is a $50 more expensive Samsung Odyssey G6. Everything else will be slower, smaller, or much more expensive. And yes, this is a budget monitor. It's not like the plastic around feels amazing, or as if anybody lost more than 2 thoughts on where to position things. But it's 240 Hz, it has nice contrast, surprisingly bright for a VA panel, I gotta say. The colors look nice. And of course, this is not a editing monitor. I mean, the IPS screens that I mainly use, that they have a completely different color space. But for gaming, this will do. And I got no dead pixels. And for $300, if you are on a budget and you are really into like big screens and you would like to try a fast one, it doesn't really get much more bang for the buck than this here. And as long as you don't expect the quality of a 400 euros, 450 euros screen, I see this as a very interesting budget-friendly option. But okay, this should be everything on the Titan Army C32C1S, a very affordable 32-inch screen, or 31.5-inch, 1440p, 240 Hz, well, a lot of adjectives there, but a very affordable screen, and I guess like a 16-year-old me would have been very happy with that. Oh god, I would have been so happy with something like that. Yeah, maybe just like a blue Titan Army logo, not a green one. That's like my issue. But at this point, a huge thank you to them for sending this over. Oh, on a side note, we have a Discord server, so if you want to join, the link is down below. And we got channel membership, so if you are planning to sell your soul for an RG poop emoji, that's one way to go. But if not, I'm also releasing the content to all members 2 or 3 weeks in advance. except for the NDA stuff, because, you know, I don't want to get sued. Additionally, you can rest assured that the ink will not only keep the channel afloat, but it will also serve to find out what the hell this is. Or maybe I'm just tripping. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you want to continue, have a look at our take on the mini PC that Geekcom sent around. Not necessarily a great combination with this giant screen here, but maybe you're looking for a whole PC on a budget, so that thing is also interesting. Hope to see you on the next one. Bye bye.